All right, so let's get started, trying to pick out a song by ear. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use YouTube as a way to just grab a bunch of different music. And I'm going to grab music that I have not done before as well. So you kind of see it, this is on the spot. My ears, like if you think that, like you need to have incredible ears, you know what? I don't have the best ears, excuse me, either. There are other musicians, I'm jealous, they have better ears. But I try to balance an approach between having a good ear and having a good sense of theory and harmony. But there are times where I'm in a gig, something goes by and I just miss it. That's just, unfortunately the way it goes. Now, you can improve these things, and using something like YouTube is a great way of improving your ears. Unfortunately for myself, I just don't have the time right now to sit down and do that. But if it's important to you, and especially if you have the time, I would suggest that you try doing it. So what I have here is I have a Frank Sinatra song. This is Strangers in the Night. I'll be honest with you, I've heard the song before, but I've never actually played the tune. All right? I'm not going to do the whole thing. I'm only just going to do a section of it, because for copyright, I don't think I can't play the whole song. So I'm just going to focus on a section of it, all right, so we can go on to different types of music. All right, so the first thing that I do when I listen to a song is, there's question about, like, how do you know what key it's in and stuff like that. Okay, I don't really worry about what key it is at first. Instead, what I do is I focus on trying to listen to the bass motion. A lot of times we want to listen to the melody, right? We're listening to what's being sung or played on the trumpet sax, whatever the melody is. We're listening to that oftentimes rather than listening to the bass line, okay? I want you to start to shift your ears to listen more to the bass line. It's going to become obvious as we go through this, but the main reason is that you start to understand the bass motion. Let me get into it and it'll make some more sense to you. So I'm just going to play the first part. Remember, on YouTube, spacebar will play the video, and then you can use your arrow key to go back, I think it's like 5 or 10 seconds. So first thing. So I'm going to try and get that first note there, right? Let me turn this down a little bit too, so I can. All right, so.
Strangers in the night.
So it's basically starting on that F. Now, here, all right, there's your melody. Now, how did I know that it's going to be an F major chord? All right, well, how I know that is because when listening to it, it sounds major. It doesn't sound like, it doesn't sound like a minor sounding chord. So it's good to just start to hear the difference between major and minor. All right, I'll give you a little quiz in a little bit, but for right now, you want to figure out, is it a major chord or is it a minor chord? So here it sounds. You could also try it as a minor as well. Yeah, that doesn't sound right. Okay, so it should be major. Now, what key is it in? It could be in the key of F, right? And it probably is in the key of F because up to that point we were starting on F, right? And then Strangers in the Night. This is where the melody starts, so that's measure 1, okay? If I'm on that F chord, it is most likely in the key of F. If I was starting on F and then it went to something like that, like a B flat, then the F would be my 5 chord, taking me to the B flat. So sometimes songs will start on the 5 chord, the dominant chord. Sometimes they'll start on the 2 chord, right, or the 3 chord, A lot of times you'll find that you'll have something like, you'll have the 5 chord and then, okay? So now I have a pretty good idea that we're in the key of F. So now if I move on, let's see where else it goes.
Exchanging.
And all I'm listening for is just the bass motion, just listening for some changes. I'm not worried about the, octaves and fifths and stuff.
Wandering in the night. What were the chances we'd be sharing love?
All F. It's just this little bass line. That's where it goes. Okay? Now, before we get there, let me tell you how I know what the next chord is going to be. The next chord is going to be a G minor. Okay? Now, how I know it's going to be a G minor is because of that note B flat. Now, could it be? I know it doesn't go to B flat because I'm remembering back to the song that I remember that it sounded like it went to a minor chord. So it's going to make sense that it's going to go to that G minor. Let's see if I'm right.
Before the night was through.
Hear the G?
Something in
Stays on a G. It doesn't really go anywhere. It just goes F up to the G.
your eyes was so inviting. Something in your smile was so exciting. Something in my heart.
Did you hear that change there? Went up to the C for a second.
Something in my heart told me I must have you.
All right, so the first chords are just the F to the G minor to the C. Now, this is where, again, having, a decent ear. I don't even have to say a good ear, a decent ear. Like, maybe your first kid pick it up and you finally know that, oh, okay, yeah, that's an F. So a decent ear, I'm thinking like that. Go back. A decent ear should be able to hear that bass note and say, oh yeah, it's an F.
Strangers in the night.
Yeah, it's not a C, it's not an A. Yeah, that's an F. All right, so now you're confident that that note is an F. Now that you're confident that the note is an F, okay, that's a decent ear. Now, the next step is you could see that I was using a little bit of analysis and a little bit of music theory to figure out what the other chords would be. I knew it went up to that G minor, okay? And we know it went to that C there, right? So now I'd be able to create a pretty basic arrangement here using the knowledge that I have of this song. So I could just keep that bass line that's right from the song. So the root, 5, 5, 5. Great bass line to know. So, make sure that you know that bass line, be able to do it in other places. In B flat, in E flat. Okay, so make sure you know how to do that because that's actually a good one to have in your bag of tricks. In the right hand, I could just start with the, with the melody. As far as picking out the melody, what I find best for me personally is just like singing the song. I just hum the song. I know I went to that C there. I think it went to, yeah, you'd have to take a listen to it. All right, so now I got the first part of my song, Strangers in the Night down. I got it down in, like 5 minutes. So I'm listening to the bass motion. I listen to what's going on in the bass line first. Then I try to figure out, well, what chords will make sense. I know now what key am I in. I'm in the key of F, all right? Because I've stayed on this F so long. One way of finding the key is if you get to the end of the song, let me just move on to the end of the song. It's a great. F, right? It's in the key of F. Wait, that doesn't sound right now, does it? Okay. Oh. Okay. So G sounds right. So whatever chord it's ending on, right? You could play that chord. It's like, okay, it's in the key of G, right? It's a perfect song. I forget that he did what he did. I'm not going to say what it is yet. But it's in the key of G, right? It's not in the key of F. But I thought all that stuff in the beginning was in the key of F. Okay, you know where I'm going with this. All right. Obviously, yes, it's in the key of F to begin with, and then we do what? That magical M word. We modulate. We move into another key. Frank Sinatra's classic for that, modulating into, another key of half steps or whole steps. So we end up going to into the key of G at some point. Like I said, I'm not going to do the whole song, but that's good. So you can hear the last chord does not match the first chord. All right. So now that tells you that, hey, look, we've moved into a different key, and a modulation, especially in a jazz song, is very common. When we get to some of the more pop stuff, you'll see that a lot of times they don't modulate. It's 4 chords throughout the entire song. Something else to understand is that sometimes you'll modulate into other keys in the middle of the song, but then come back to the original key. So you might move to the key of, like I'm old-fashioned. I'm old-fashioned goes into the key of A. All right, so there's a perfect example of, like, it starts in the key of F, but then moves into the key of A. All right, we don't have to worry about that so much right now. So the main takeaway from this lesson is listen to that bass motion. You're going to hear how I'm going to use that through the rest of this lesson. Okay, so that's it. I'll see you in the next chapter.